The other day, my very generous friend Bianca decided to give me a bunch of fabric that she didn't need anymore. Among that was an old dress that her grandma, I think, made a while ago. She told me that I could do whatever I wanted with it. I was kind of sad because when I tried it on, I thought it actually looked kind of cute. I liked the cut and just how like it was tight at the waist and it was kind of flattering. I was worried that I would just turn it into something very ugly, but as you can see, it turned out pretty well. I guess this is another upcycling video. So if you want to know how I made this shirt, well then just stay tuned. After getting over my love for the original dress, I gathered the strength to cut it into pieces. Well, into the largest pieces possible. I cut out the parts I didn't need, like this collar layered with old interfacing that was practically peeling off and kind of yellow. I didn't want to keep that. Oh, and I kept those just in case, but I didn't actually use them. I cut out every seam and, because I try to recycle everything I can, even decided to seam rip the darts. It gave me a little bit more fabric to work with. For the front of the shirt, I cut out 3 pieces so there wouldn't be a seam down the middle and made sure they were all the same length. The plan was to put in elastic to gather the bust and then shirr the rest, so I made everything bigger than my actual measurements. But I didn't really measure anything, so I couldn't tell you what those larger measurements actually were. I pinned the pieces together and sewed those in place with a straight stitch. I cut the excess fabric from the seam allowance and decided to make a lining out of my trusty bedsheet. It didn't really need one because the fabric wasn't see-through at all, but I figured it'd be easier to sew little casings for the elastic if there was already a second layer. I ironed everything flat and pressed the seams open. Then I attached the lining to the bodice by sewing all around it, leaving a small opening at the end to flip it inside out. I cut the corners and the excess fabric. I ironed it again, although a part of me wondered why, since it was going to get all wrinkled up with the shirring. But seriously, it's important to iron it so the seams are all flat. Next, I sewed a straight stitch all along the top, creating a casing for my elastic to go through. I did the same around the middle with 2 other seams. So I've never actually tried shirring before. I'm kind of nervous. I've watched videos on it, I've researched it, but I've just never tried it before. I know that you're supposed to hand wind the bobbin. I wanted to try it on my fabric first. So I cut this piece of fabric and I figured I'd just try to shirr that first before actually doing it on something that I've worked on. I have no idea how that's gonna go. After a few tries, it was kind of working, but it wasn't bunched up enough for my taste until I finally figured out the exact settings I needed to get what I wanted. I put my stitch length to 4 and the tension to 5. My machine was making a weird noise, but I decided to ignore it because things seemed to be going well. I look like I'm in heaven. Nope. It is definitely working though. After I was satisfied with the results, I started sharing my actual project. I was pretty nervous though. What I ended up doing was not cutting my threads in between each row. I figured it'd be faster and sturdier if I kept going and never cut the thread and the elastic. So at the end of a row, I would just lift up the foot, sew a few stitches down, and flip it around to start a new row. I couldn't do it all in one shot though because the elastic bobbin would empty itself pretty fast, but I'd just refill it and start again. When I was done, I tied all of the loose ends together, elastic and thread. It was pretty long, but I was watching Netflix the whole time, so... Okay, this took me so long, but look at that. Look at that. It actually looks like what you buy at the store. I can't believe I made that. Ah! Next step is that I'm gonna thread the elastic through the 2 casings that I sewed there. I'm kind of dumb. I sewed those sides shut. I just have to seam rip those little parts with my seam ripper, and then I can thread the elastic through with the safety pin and see what I end up with. Okay, I know we can't really see what I'm doing, but I mean, I did exactly what I said I would. Then I cut out my 2 back pieces, again a little larger than my actual back, and did the same with the bedsheet. And as I took those to the sewing machine, something terrible happened. This is very irrelevant. Pardon the washing machine in the background. I just stepped on my fabric chalk and I broke it. I just felt like mentioning it so we can all remember her. I mean, I'll still use it, but... Burdened by grief, I went to bed and woke up the next day to a revelation. Okay, so I was trying to come up with a title for this video, so I started doing some research on YouTube, and I kept seeing people saying like, oh, Reformation inspired top. I keep seeing that word, Reformation, but I never knew what it was, so I decided to look it up, and let me tell you, now I understand. I have discovered a whole new world, and I'm kind of sad that I did, because now I know that I'm never going to be able to afford any of this. Just look at these. How gorgeous are those? Like this one. Like, I want to make that. But look, $82 for this. Am I the only one who thinks this is... Wait. This looks exactly like the top I'm making. Like exactly. It's $208 for this. Challenge accepted. I got back to work freshly energized. I sewed my back pieces together and basically repeated the same steps from the day before. I could truly see myself winning this insignificant challenge that made me feel like I was doing something with my life. Until... I ran out of thread. Is this going to recycle? So... I'll just try to see if I have similar thread. I don't. This is way too green. Okay. What do I do? Guess it's okay if it doesn't look exactly the same. Oh, this sucks. I decided to sew the rest of the lining to the bodice with white thread until I found something better. Then I cut the excess fabric in the corners, flipped it inside out completely out of frame, and ironed everything down. Next, I scavenged the house for thread that could work with my project. I found this dark blue one that looked like it was working at first when I was sewing the casing at the top, except it kept breaking during the shirring part and it was driving me insane, so I switched for this dark gray instead. This one didn't break at all, but that's because it was very thick and it ended up showing way too much on the outside. I undid everything, keeping the precious elastic, and finally settled for the way too green thread. And what do you know? It was perfect. I must have shirred for around an hour, so I won't show you all of it, but it ended up looking like this. I threaded a piece of elastic through my little casing at the top with a safety pin and sewed the ends shut with the elastic. I sewed the front and back pieces together, making sure that the ends were aligned. Then I moved on to the sleeves. I didn't have that much fabric left, so I tried to maximize what I had, even if that meant having a sleeve with an additional seam in it. But I put it towards the back, so it really doesn't matter. Oh, and that was the first time that I was making sleeves, so keep in mind that I didn't really know what I was doing. On my folded fabric, I drew the classic shape that I'd seen in videos, but was very unsure of whether I'd done it right or not. It took me a while to take the leap, but I eventually womaned up and cut out my sleeves. I folded the edges at the top twice, leaving enough room to thread some elastic through to gather the sleeves and make them poofy. And yes, that is the same coffee I was drinking earlier. I then sewed those casings in place. It wasn't completely flat, there were a few folds here and there because I have yet to understand how to hem a curved edge, but the casing worked anyway and I threaded my pieces of elastic through it, pinning the ends in place. Then I made the sleeves a little more sleeve-shaped by making the wrist area a little smaller. Next, it was time for more shirring. I marked where I wanted it with some fabric chalk, at least what was left of it, and sewed 7 rows on each sleeve. I sewed my sleeves shut, making sure the ends were aligned nicely, and took the time to overlock the raw edges with my favorite mutated zigzag stitch. Then I attached the sleeves to the bodice. Lastly, I quickly hemmed the sleeve cuffs by folding the edges twice and sewing everything with a straight stitch. So there we go. This is the top. I'm actually so excited about this. I'm so happy with it. I know it's gonna get worn a lot. And if you remember, the Reformation top was $208. I think overall, this cost me about $3 because technically my friend gave me the dress. The elastic thread, I think I paid around $15 for the whole thing and I barely used any of it. I don't know, I'm not good at math. I mean, anyone who knows me knows that I'm terrible at math. This elastic, I don't even remember how much it cost. With the amount that I used of each, like it can't have cost more than $5. So $208 versus $5. I'm pretty happy with it. Yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that you're going to try to make it at home, because honestly, it's kind of easy and it's flattering no matter what. Anyway, I've been rambling. Hopefully, I'll see you next Friday for my next video. This is going to take so long to edit.